Ani si chula dragon.
A child is a rebirth of God. He should be respected and he should be given every opportunity to grow and to be, not according to you, but according to his potential. Parents and teachers can punish or deprive a child, and he has to accept whatever is being said by those who have power. In this way, we were all distracted from our natural paths and moved in a direction which was not meant for us. That's why there's always anxiety, anguish, and a deep sadness. This sadness is existential. So, are you ready to change your direction? To let go of that sadness? To be that child again, but this time on your own terms. Are you ready to break free? Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here and welcome to this two-part series that I decided to call Inner Child. This first part is going to be more theoretical. I want to talk about conditioning and trauma and all these various things that happen during our childhoods that then later influence and control our everyday lives as adults, how we behave, how we respond to certain situations, how we feel inside. I think we're very blessed to be living in a time when mental health is considered something important, something that needs to be talked about more. And I also think that sharing our experiences with each other can really help us all grow together. So without further ado, my first question to you is, why do you think we romanticize childhood so much? Because when you think about all these nostalgic proverbs and sayings and quotes you can find all over the internet, you can even hear them from all these members of society, your parents, your grandparents. Everyone is always talking about how childhood is the best part of your life, how you need to cherish your youth because everything that comes later is just very difficult and sad and heavy. I just can't help but think, what kind of a sad existence would that be for a person who is on this planet for 70 or 80 years or even more, to just have this short span of maybe 10 or 20 years in which he or she is happy and then the rest is just surviving. Something just doesn't add up here. Something feels very off. And looking at my own experience, I'm now 26 years old and I've never been happier. I cannot say that I was happier as a child than I am now. I think a lot of us, when we look back to our childhood, we remember these beautiful memories and being careless and carefree and playing all day, feeling very light and free. But you know, how much of that is actually what happened and how we felt in those moments, and how much of it is influenced by this general attitude of the Western society that childhood is the best part of your life, that is this perfect time of play and enjoying everything around you. Because when I think about my childhood, I think I had a good childhood. But you know, there were a lot of times that were very difficult for me. I think a lot of you can relate that childhood is not only this beautiful time of carelessness, but is actually very difficult at times. Because think of how society treats children. We treat children as blank slates, as these pieces of clay, and now we need to mold them, you know, into something to fit into this society that we've created. Always demanding humbleness and respect from children and rarely giving it back. The general approach of adults towards children is, here, let me teach you something, instead of let me learn something from you. And in fact, we can learn so much from children. We can learn about curiosity and playfulness and honesty and willingness to be authentic, to experiment, to fail. A child may ask you, why is the sky blue? Or why do we go to sleep at night? But have you ever heard a child ask, how do I live my life? Or how do I become happy? Children do not ask these things. They do not need these answers. They already know the answer. They don't even question it. They just live it. And instead of cherishing this, instead of respecting this, instead of learning from this, what we do is we tell them, you're not good enough the way that you are. You need to study all of these subjects in school, and then you need to learn all of these societal norms in order to be worthy, to be valued, and to be accepted in this world. And then as we grow up, we wonder, why do we always have this need to constantly change something about ourselves, to become a different, better, improved person or version of ourselves? Why do we always feel the need to change instead of just being who we are? So I just wanted to share this journal entry with you that I have from the other day. And I'm gonna be translating this from Croatian in real time, so please don't judge. To try to change oneself is like trying to change the weather, the season, the time, or the day. Change is always here, always happening, always flowing in circles, beginningless and endless. To try to change oneself is like trying to push a boat that is already powered by all of its engines, carried by the waves. Change is here, now, in this moment. What we can do is climb the boat. Let the waves carry us with their energy, which is infinite. We cannot change ourselves. It's an illusion. We're changing all the time, in each moment, and our decision has nothing to do with that. We can only watch, observe, feel for a long, long time and very deeply, and then we can understand who we are, what we are, why we are, why we wish, why we crave, why we dream, why we breathe. Change is happening all the time. We are just its channels. The only thing we can choose is to be channels for love, to be love, to allow ourselves to be love, to throw away all the masks, all that isn't ours, so that the only thing that's left is what we really are, love, unconditional and unlimited. That is the only thing we can do, and that is all we need. Love, to be love, which we already are, to remember. Moving on, I've stumbled upon a lot of spiritual teachers and gurus talking about how there is no past and there is no future and there is only this present moment, and that's where we're supposed to be, and I completely, fully agree with this. But then again, I learned another thing from my experience. It can be very difficult to feel and be in the now. And in the past, I couldn't really figure out why this is the case. Why do we spend so much of our time just functioning on autopilot? You know, just think about it. When you eat your food, for example, are you really there to witness that moment? Can you feel the spoon or the fork pressing against your tongue? Can you feel the food traveling from your mouth lower and lower to your bowels? Or are you doing something completely different in that moment? Are you looking at your phone, thinking about work, reading a book, being preoccupied by thoughts about the past or the future? So I'd like to encourage you now to stop this video and think about, and maybe even write down all the things that you do during your day when you just don't feel present, when you're psychologically somewhere completely different. And to ask yourself, why? And for me, the answer was trauma and conditioning. So I want to talk a bit about conditioning. It is based on this fact that we have neural pathways in our brain that are being created, and then when we receive a stimulus, the signal and the energy travels these neural pathways, and when this process is repeated again and again and again, these pathways solidify, they become stronger. So when we are children and our brains are in this state of high sensitivity and high plasticity, it is very easy for our brains to make certain connections, and these connections are then perpetuated for our entire lives. And so very early on, we learn that if we do bad in school, or we don't say hi to our neighbor, or we break something, we're gonna get punished, either by a nasty look of disapproval, or unkind words, or yelling, or being ignored, or even maybe being beaten in some cases. And on the other hand, if we do as we're told, even though in some cases it may mean that we need to suppress our true feelings and be someone who we are not, we're gonna be rewarded. I started to explore this topic of conditioning a few years back when I was in college studying to be a general education teacher for kids. And what I slowly started to realize is that schools work very, very hard to create functioning members of society, not happy and healthy and creative and authentic and rebellious individuals. They're working to create somebody who fits in and who does what he is told. But even though society doesn't want you to be yourself, society needs you to be yourself. And please always remember that. We all need you to be yourself. And the best thing you can do for this planet, for this world, for this society, and for the people around you is to be yourself and to let your voice be heard. Back to conditioning, I had this professor in college for one semester. Back then I was already deep into learning about conditioning. And one thing she said amazed me so much. She said, I am aware of the fact that I love girly stuff. I like pink color, I like wearing skirts because I'm conditioned to do so as a female. She said there is nothing wrong with female loving female things, but just always remember that this is not something you were born with. This is not something inherent. This is something you were taught, something you were conditioned to do. And I read in an Osho book recently, humans are like parrots. When we see a rose, we say, oh, this rose is beautiful. When we see a sunset, we say, oh, this sunset is beautiful. Just repeating the same things over and over again without even questioning, why is this beautiful to me? Is this coming from my soul, from within, or is it coming from outside because I was told all my life through these various channels that a rose is beautiful and grass is just grass? And so if you can, just ask yourself, what is expected from me just because I am a woman or a man or a parent or a son or a daughter, a teacher, a doctor, a priest, a funny person, a strong person? And what would happen if I stopped doing these things? How would other people react? Would they still accept me as I am? And what do I expect from other people just because they're my husband or wife or mother or father or sister or brother, and how I would feel and react if they just stopped? We have all of these silent societal contracts that we obey and that we expect others to obey, and we often punish people for disobeying. So we're in fact not only conditioning our children, we're conditioning each other. We are all responsible for this. There is no enemy. We are all both perpetrators and victims at the same time. I feel like we arrive so rich to this planet, carrying all this wisdom and love and light and knowledge. And throughout our lives, we exchange it for acceptance. And then in the end, we end up poor. We end up beggars, just begging others to love us and to tell us that we are good, instead of just realizing for ourselves that we are good. And now I want to say a few words about trauma. I'm sure that at least once in your life you felt this paralyzing fear. You felt too scared to move or to even take a breath. And for me, this feeling is what best describes what trauma actually is and what it does to you. I feel like this part of us that is traumatized just stays in survival mode forever. I feel like it stays frozen until it is finally healed. And this can then manifest in people being depressed or being aggressive towards themselves or other people. It can lead you to feel anxious or frustrated in triggering situations. And what helped me the most heal my trauma was just slowly building this awareness of why I feel a certain way. Because what I found is that people can often feel a psychological or even a physical sensation, and often it is not the sensation itself, but the fact that we cannot understand where it's coming from. That's what creates anxiety or frustration or other feelings we consider negative. So I want to give you an example from my personal experience. I was bullied as a child, and not only by other kids but also by a certain teacher. And this created a lot of trauma that I'm still healing. There is this talent show in Croatia that I've been watching with my family, and what I've noticed is that every time I watch it, I'm so triggered because there's all these people gathering all the courage that they have, coming to that stage and pouring their hearts out, showing their souls, and then these judges are just not able to welcome it with love and respect and empathy. And then this can result in them being very mean often, and these people getting really hurt. And it's very, very triggering because oftentimes the reasons why I was bullied as a child was because I was being myself and I was trying to pour my heart out. Being myself often brought me in situations where I was rejected and dismissed and insulted and even physically assaulted. So when I see a similar thing happening to someone else, it just breaks my heart over and over again. And what happened actually after watching one of these episodes, I went to sleep and I had this dream of trying to rescue this little boy from being bullied. And the setting was the exact same setting where I was bullied, in the hallway of my elementary school. And when I woke up, I was like, okay, I know where this came from, because oftentimes we're feeling bad, we're just trying to push those feelings away, just suppress them. It just seems easier not to deal with those feelings because they're very strange and mysterious. But when we finally realize why we're feeling a certain way, these feelings and sensations become much less scary and easier to handle. And that's how we heal. And the thing is, with trauma, it messes with our ability to learn. When we're traumatized, this part of us, as I've said, is frozen and incapable of learning. And for a huge portion of my life, when I didn't understand and wasn't aware of all my trauma and how it affects me, I couldn't learn from it. And I was just constantly in this loop of bad relationships with people, bad friendships that weren't really good for me. And I couldn't really gather the courage to be myself, and I didn't even know who myself was. But as I started to heal, it became so much easier to let go of certain relationships and to just show up as my raw, uncensored self without all these fears and with excitement. And believe me, I know that sitting with all these uncomfortable feelings can be very challenging and difficult at times. But I promise you, if you don't force anything and if you follow your own pace, all the love that you have within yourself, and I know you have a lot of it, is going to heal your trauma eventually. So I want to end with encouraging you to send love and compassion to the child inside of you, to validate its needs and fears and desires. And if you feel like you didn't get something you needed as a child from your parents, you can now give it to yourself. You can nurture and nourish yourself in many, many ways. Thank you again so much for being here and for continuing to go forward on this journey that may not always be all sunshine and rainbows. Just remember that as you are healing yourself, you're healing the collective as well. I really truly love you, and I'm sending all the compassion and support to the child within you. And I will see you in part 2, where we'll focus more on channeling that inner child and inviting it back into our now. Goodbye.
Bravo! Maškara se zaletila. Bravo, maškara. Digni se. Pala je maškara, da. Joj.
Tebe ću čekat ja dok svane dan.